The desert was burning under the twin suns, the sand glowing like fire and the air so dry it cut into the lungs. A lonely sound carried in the wind, the soft cry of a young alien girl who could not move her legs. She lay half buried in the hot sand, her skin pale and weak, her eyes wide with fear and pain. Moments earlier, her father, the powerful alien baron, had left her there. His armored caravan had stopped on the ridge, his guards dragging the small girl out like a useless burden. The baron stood tall, his cloak blowing in the desert wind, his cold eyes watching her struggle in the sand. "You are no daughter of mine," he said with disgust. His voice was deep and cruel. "A paralyzed child has no worth, no future. You are dead weight to my house. Better to let the desert claim you." The girl, tears streaming down her face, tried to speak. Her voice was weak but full of longing. "Father, please, don't leave me." But the baron turned his back without hesitation. His guards mounted the hovering beasts, and the caravan began to move away. Sand swirled up behind them, the sound of engines fading until only silence remained. She was left, alone, abandoned in the heat. The sun burned her skin. The sand clung to her hands as she tried to crawl, but her legs would not answer her. Every movement was agony. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions, and she knew no one would come. No one ever came back for those abandoned here. Her mind was racing with fear. "I will die here. I cannot walk. I cannot move." But even in her pain, her spirit refused to give up completely. She prayed silently, prayed that someone, anyone, might find her. Far away, a human traveler was making his way across the desert. His name was Daniel. He carried little, just a canteen of water, a survival pack, and an old rifle slung across his back. He had walked this desert many times, searching for work, searching for purpose. Daniel's eyes were sharp, trained to notice the smallest signs of life in the endless wasteland. That was when he saw it, a strange, dark mark in the sand, almost hidden by the shifting dunes. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, but then he heard it, a faint, broken cry carried by the wind. His heart tightened. He quickened his pace, his boots sinking into the hot sand. The cry grew clearer, a sound of desperation and helplessness. When he finally reached the dune, his breath caught. There she was, a young alien girl lying in the sand, her small hands trembling, her face pale and covered in dust. She was no older than 16, her alien features delicate, but her eyes filled with pain and fear. Her legs lay stiff and lifeless, as if they no longer belonged to her. Daniel knelt beside her, lowering his pack. His voice was steady but gentle. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open wider, filled with shock. She had expected death, not rescue. Her lips trembled. "But please, don't leave me here." He offered her water, tilting the canteen carefully to her mouth. She drank greedily, though weak. Each drop gave her a little more strength. Daniel looked around. The sand bore the marks of heavy tracks. An alien caravan had passed through recently. The truth hit him like a blade. She wasn't lost. She was abandoned. Who would do this? To you? He muttered under his breath. But he already knew the answer. He had heard of the alien baron, a ruthless leader known for cruelty. If this girl was his daughter, then her fate had been sealed the moment she was born paralyzed. The girl tried to speak again. "Father left me," he said. "I am nothing." Her voice broke and tears streamed down her face. Daniel clenched his jaw. His heart burned with anger. He could not understand how any father could abandon his child, especially in a place like this. The desert was not merciful. He wiped the sweat from his brow, looking down at her fragile body. "Listen," he said firmly. "I don't care who left you. I'm not going to let you die here." Her eyes widened, hope flickering inside them. For the first time she whispered, You will help me?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, I will help you." He slid his arms gently under her, lifting her from the burning sand. She was light, almost weightless, but the heat made every step harder. The desert wind howled around them as, if warning him of the danger somewhere far behind, the alien baron's caravan disappeared into the horizon, leaving only dust. Daniel walked the opposite way, carrying the girl, knowing he had just made an enemy he could not yet see. But in that moment, he didn't care. What mattered was the trembling girl in his arms, abandoned and unwanted. Yet still, alive, still breathing. The desert had tried to claim her. Her own father had cast her away, but Daniel, an ordinary human, had chosen differently. He had chosen to see not her weakness but her worth. And as the suns blazed overhead, the story of survival, betrayal, and hidden strength had just begun. Daniel moved slowly through the burning desert, the alien girl cradled in his arms. Her skin was hot to the touch, her breaths shallow. Every step felt heavier, not because of her weight, but because of the choice he had made. He could have walked away. He could have left her like the others had done, but something inside him refused. He was human, and humans did not turn their backs on the helpless. The girl stirred, her cracked lips moving. "Why? Are you helping me?" Her voice was weak, trembling between fear and confusion. Daniel looked down at her, sweat dripping from his forehead. "Because you need it," he said simply. His tone was calm but firm. Her eyes blinked slowly. She had expected mockery or pity. Instead, she saw only determination in his face. As the sun scorched the endless dunes, Daniel found a small outcropping of rock. It was not much, but it gave shade. He laid her gently on the ground and opened his survival pack. He poured water onto a cloth and wiped the sand from her face. Her alien skin shimmered faintly under the sun, fragile yet beautiful. He noticed faint scars along her arms, marks that spoke of years of neglect and cruelty. "Your name?" Daniel asked softly as he checked her breathing. The girl hesitated, her voice cracked. I don't have one." Daniel froze. His chest tightened. "What do you mean you don't have one? Everyone has a name." "My father never gave me one," she whispered, eyes filling with tears. "He said I didn't deserve it." Silence hung in the hot air. The weight of her words sank into Daniel's heart like a stone. He clenched his fists, fighting the anger rising inside him. A child without a name, treated as if she were nothing. "Well," Daniel said after a moment, his voice firm, "that ends now. No one should be nameless, not while I'm here." The girl looked at him, uncertain. "You would give me a name?" "Yes," Daniel replied without hesitation. "But first you need rest, we'll talk about it later." He gave her another sip of water and tore a strip from his shirt, making a cloth to shield her head from the sun. He then set up a small, emergency beacon, not to call for help from her father's men, but to check the signal strength of his own tracker. Far on the horizon, sand shimmered with heat. He knew the Baron might send hunters if word reached him that his daughter still lived. Daniel had little time. The girl stirred again. "You should leave me," she whispered weakly. "If my father knows you helped me, he will kill you. He will kill anyone." Daniel knelt beside her, his eyes sharp. "Listen to me, I've fought storms, beasts, and worse than arrogant barons. If he comes, he comes. But I will not leave you, understand?" Her lips trembled. She wanted to believe him, but doubt was carved deep in her heart. All her life she had been told she was worthless. And now, this human, a stranger, spoke to her like she mattered. As the hours passed, Daniel prepared a small fire using dried cactus and scraps from his pack. He heated water and gave her warm broth from a ration pack. She drank slowly, her strength returning little by little. Her voice grew steadier. "You are different," she said. "Most would laugh at me or walk away. You look at me as if I am not broken." Daniel smiled faintly. "Because you're not. But I cannot walk," she said almost bitterly. "I cannot run, I cannot fight, I am useless." Daniel shook his head firmly. "No one is useless. I've seen warriors with strong legs and sharp swords fall in fear, and I've seen children with no weapons survive because of their courage. Strength isn't only in the body, it's in the mind, the heart." Her wide eyes studied him, for the first time seeing not pity but truth. The desert wind howled suddenly, carrying with it the faint echo of engines. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He stood quickly, scanning the horizon. He thought he saw movement, a speck against the glowing sand. He knew what it meant. The Baron's hunters were already looking. He returned to her side, his voice steady. "We have to move now." "But how?" she whispered, panic rising. "I cannot walk. I will slow you down." Daniel crouched low, locking eyes with her. "Then I'll carry you. You are not slowing me down, understand?" She stared at him, stunned by his certainty. Then slowly, she nodded. Daniel lifted her once again, adjusting her carefully on his back, her fragile arms wrapped weakly around his shoulders. The sun was dipping lower now, shadows stretching across the dunes. But danger was closer than ever. Every step he took was heavy with risk. The desert was not forgiving and hunters were not merciful. Yet Daniel's resolve did not waver. The girl whispered softly into his ear. "Why? Why risk your life for me?" Daniel's voice was quiet but strong. "Because someone has to. Because you deserve more than what he gave you. Because you are not nothing." Her chest tightened, tears spilling silently. For the first time in her life, she felt seen. She was no longer just the paralyzed daughter abandoned in the desert. She was someone worth saving. As night approached, stars lit the desert sky. Daniel carried her forward into the unknown, knowing every step would bring greater danger. But his decision was final, unshakable. He had chosen her, and that choice would change both of their lives forever. The desert night was colder than ice. The twin suns had dropped below the horizon, and the once burning sand now turned into a sea of darkness and chill. Daniel walked carefully, his boots sinking into the cool dunes. The girl rested on his back, her arms loosely around his shoulders. Every step felt endless, yet Daniel pushed forward. He knew the Baron's hunters were out there. He could almost feel their eyes searching. Their engines had echoed earlier, and silence now only meant danger was near. The girl's voice broke the quiet, soft but sharp. "You are going the wrong way." Daniel slowed, surprised. "Wrong way? How do you know?" Her eyes were half closed, but her tone carried certainty. "The desert talks. The wind direction tells the truth. If you keep walking straight, you will fall into the dead dunes. Nothing lives there, not even insects." Daniel frowned. He had traveled deserts before, but not this one. He studied her face. She was weak, barely breathing, yet she spoke with confidence. "Which way then?" he asked. She raised her trembling hand, pointing toward a stretch of broken rocks in the distance. "That way. There is an oasis hidden beyond the stone ridge. My people knew it. My father never cared to remember, but I do." Daniel followed her direction, adjusting his steps. He trusted her words. Something in her voice was not desperate. It was steady, as if the desert itself was whispering to her. Hours passed. Stars glittered above like cold diamonds. Daniel's strength was fading, but the girl's whispers kept him going. She guided him through narrow paths, warned him of sand pits, and even recognized the faint glow of poisonous plants in the dark. Daniel realized she was not helpless. Her body may have been broken, but her mind was sharp, sharper than most men he had met. When they finally reached the ridge, Daniel collapsed beside the rocks, setting her down gently. His chest rose and fell heavily as he drank the last drops of water from his canteen. The girl looked at him, her eyes glowing faintly in the starlight. "You doubted me," she said softly. Daniel chuckled weakly. "Not doubted, just surprised. You're smarter than you let on." She turned her gaze toward the dunes, her voice calm. "My body betrayed me, but my mind never did. I listened, I watched, I remembered. That is all I could do when the others laughed at me." Her words carried pain, but also quiet strength. Daniel understood then. Her father had abandoned her not because she was worthless, but because he was blind to what she truly was. Before Daniel could answer, the wind shifted, carrying a new sound. Distant hums of engines, hunters. The girl's eyes widened. "They are close." Daniel grabbed his rifle, scanning the darkness. How far? She closed her eyes, listening to the sand shifting under the vibration. 3, maybe 4 machines moving fast from the west. Daniel cursed under his breath. He could not outrun them while carrying her. They needed cover. The girl whispered quickly. Inside the ridge, there is a narrow cave, hidden by fallen stones. I can show you. Daniel didn't waste time. He lifted her again and followed her directions. His boots scraped against the rocks until he found the small opening, barely wide enough for a man to crawl. He squeezed through, pulling her with him, and the darkness swallowed them whole. Inside, the cave smelled of dust and age. Strange carvings glowed faintly along the walls, symbols of an ancient race. Daniel ran his hand over them, confused. What is this place? The girl's voice was almost reverent. Old ruins, older than my people. I studied their patterns whenever my father allowed books near me. These symbols, they are warnings? Daniel raised an eyebrow. Warnings? She nodded weakly. Traps, protectors of the oasis. Only those who know how to read them can pass safely. Daniel exhaled slowly, realizing again that she was more than he had thought. Without her, he would have walked blindly into death. The engines outside roared closer. Shadows passed across the entrance. The hunters had arrived. Their voices echoed faintly, rough and cruel. Check the rocks. She cannot have gone far. The Baron wants proof she is dead. Daniel held his breath, gripping the rifle, ready for a fight. But the girl touched his arm, shaking her head. Her eyes signaled patience. She whispered in his ear, If we move deeper, they won't find us. The walls curve. The sound of our breathing will vanish in the echoes. Daniel trusted her again. Following her guidance, they crawled deeper into the twisting cave until the sounds of the hunters faded behind them. Only the drip of ancient water remained. At last, they stopped in a chamber where a pool of clear water glowed faintly, lit by crystals in the walls. Daniel stared in awe. An oasis. Underground. The girl smiled faintly, exhaustion in her eyes. I told you. Daniel helped her drink, then drank himself, the cool water refreshing his tired body. He looked at her differently now, not as a burden, but as someone who carried knowledge worth more than gold. You're not weak, he said firmly. Your father was blind, but I see it. You've got more strength than most warriors out there. Tears welled in her eyes, not of pain, but of something new. Hope. For the first time she whispered, maybe, I am not useless after all. Daniel smiled, leaning against the stone wall. No, you're not. In fact, you might be the reason we survive. The cave glowed softly around them, and though danger still hunted outside, something had changed. The girl who had been abandoned in the desert now revealed her hidden strength, and Daniel knew deep inside that her mind would soon become their greatest weapon. The Baron's throne room was dark, lit only by burning torches along the walls. The alien Baron sat tall, his armored chest gleaming, his eyes sharp with cruelty. He listened as one of his hunters knelt before him, sand still clinging to the man's boots. My lord, the hunter said, bowing his head low. We tracked the girl's trail. She is alive. Someone carries her. Fair. Baron's jaw clenched. His long fingers tapped against the metal armrest of his throne. Alive? Impossible. I left her where she belonged, in the desert's mouth. Yes, my lord, the hunter replied nervously. But she did not die. A human was seen near the tracks. He must have taken her. The Baron's eyes burned with fury. He stood, his voice booming across the hall. A human dares to defy me. A worthless outsider thinks he can undo my judgment? The guard standing near the walls flinched at his rage. The Baron slammed his staff onto the floor, the sound echoing like thunder. Send every hunter, every tracker, find them. Bring me the human's head and the girl's body. The hunters bowed and scattered, their machines roaring to life as they rode into the desert. The Baron stood by the window of his fortress, watching the endless dunes, his lips curled into a cruel smile. She was born weak. She will die weak. No human will change that. Meanwhile, in the hidden cave beneath the ridge, Daniel and the girl rested by the glowing pool. The cool air, gave them relief, but Daniel's instincts told him they could not stay long. Hunters would not stop until they searched every stone. The girl leaned against the wall, her eyes closed, but her mind sharp. "They will come soon," she whispered. "My father does not forgive disobedience." Daniel adjusted the rifle on his lap, his voice calm but serious. "Then we stay ahead of them. You keep guiding me, and I'll keep us alive." Her eyes opened slowly, staring into the waters. Reflection. "He will not forgive you either. He will want your blood for touching what he threw away." Daniel gave her a half smile. "Good. Let him come. I've been hunted before." Before she could answer, the ground trembled faintly. The sound of engines rumbled through the cave walls. Hunters were close. Daniel stood quickly, grabbing his pack. Time to move. The girl pointed toward a narrow tunnel branching deeper into the cave. "That way. It leads to the surface again, but not where they expect. It will take us near the salt flats. Hunters hate that ground, their machines sink there." Daniel nodded and carried her once again. The tunnel was tight, scraping against his shoulders as he crawled forward with her in his arms. The glow of the crystals faded behind them until only darkness remained. He lit a small lamp from his pack. The weak light revealed ancient carvings along the tunnel walls. Strange. Creatures' battles and warnings in alien script. The girl's eyes studied them, whispering, "These walls remember everything. Even the screams of those who entered uninvited." Daniel glanced at her. "Comforting thought," he muttered. But her words made him more careful. Above the cave, the Baron's hunters searched relentlessly. Their machines hovered low over the rocks, scanning with sharp beams of light. One hunter dismounted, placing his hand on the warm stones. "They were here," he growled. "The sand is disturbed, they crawled inside." Another hunter sneered. "Then they are already dead. These caves kill anyone who dares walk too deep." But the leader shook his head. "The Baron demands proof. We enter." The hunters drew their weapons and slipped into the cave, their boots echoing. Deep inside, Daniel stopped, hearing faint sounds behind them. He whispered, "They're coming." The girl nodded, her face pale but her eyes fierce. "Then we must be faster." Daniel picked up his pace, but the tunnel grew steeper. He struggled to keep his balance, rocks sliding beneath his boots. At one point he slipped, almost dropping her, but she clutched his shirt tightly, whispering, "Left, take the left path, it leads to light." Daniel trusted her and turned sharply. The tunnel opened into a wide chamber with cracks in the ceiling where moonlight spilled through. At the far end, a slope led upward, toward the surface. But before they could move, voices echoed behind them. "Hunters?" Daniel placed the girl down gently, raising his rifle. "Stay low," he whispered. His eyes narrowed, heart steady. Shadows appeared in the tunnel, glowing eyes of alien helmets staring at him. One hunter stepped forward, laughing. "Human, you made a mistake. That girl belongs to the desert." Daniel aimed his rifle, his voice cold. "Not anymore." The hunters raised their weapons, and the chamber filled with tension. The girl, watching from the shadows, felt her chest tighten. She could not fight with her body, but her mind raced. She remembered the carvings, the traps the ruins held. Her trembling hands touched the symbols, etched into the wall, whispering old words she had read in forgotten texts. The stones beneath the hunters glowed faintly. Suddenly, the ground cracked open. A burst of sand and rock swallowed one of the hunters, his scream echoing through the chamber. The others stumbled, panic flashing in their eyes. Daniel looked back. At the girl, shocked, she had activated the ancient defenses. Her voice shook, but her eyes burned with determination. "Go, Daniel. I will guide you." Daniel scooped her into his arms once again and ran toward the slope. His boots hit the loose rocks as he climbed. The hunters fired wildly behind him, beams of energy striking the walls, but the ruins fought back, stones collapsing, traps activating. They burst out of the cave into the cold desert night, the stars shining above. Daniel breathed hard, his arms aching, but they were alive. The girl lay against him, exhausted but smiling faintly. "I told you, the desert still listens to me." Daniel looked at her with new respect. "And I'll keep listening too." Behind them, the hunters' shouts echoed from the collapsing cave. The Baron's hunt had begun. But so had something greater, an alliance. Between human courage and alien wisdom, the desert no longer held just prey and predators. It now held two survivors, bound together by choice. And the Baron would soon learn that his greatest mistake was abandoning the very strength he never saw. The cold night slowly faded as the twin suns rose again, painting the dunes with burning light. Daniel shielded his eyes while carrying the girl across the endless sand. His legs ached, his throat dry, but he did not stop. Behind them the cave was gone, half collapsed under ancient traps. Some hunters had been buried inside. But Daniel knew more would come. The Baron would never quit. The girl stirred in his arms, her voice tired but steady. "We cannot keep running forever. The desert will kill us before my father's men do." Daniel glanced down at her. "Then we need shelter, somewhere they cannot follow." She lifted her hand weakly and pointed ahead. Beyond the dunes rose a cluster of jagged black stones, sharp against the sky. There, the ruins of the trial ground. Daniel frowned. Trial ground? Her eyes held a faint, close to an old place built by the ancients. Only the worthy could pass through. My people call it cursed, but I believe it is a place of survival. Daniel tightened his grip on her and headed toward the stones. His instincts screamed danger, but he trusted her knowledge. She had saved him once, and he would trust her again. When they reached the ruins, the air grew heavy. The black stones rose like broken teeth from the desert floor, strange symbols glowing faintly along their edges. The entrance was a dark archway, cold air seeping out as if the place was alive. Daniel set her down carefully on the smooth stone. "Stay close to me," he said, raising his rifle. The girl nodded, her eyes scanning the symbols. "This is the desert trial. Many who entered never returned. The ancients built tests to measure strength of body and spirit." Daniel looked at her sharply. "Tests? Like traps?" "Yes," she whispered. "But not only traps. Choices, illusions, and fears. The desert itself becomes your enemy inside." Daniel exhaled slowly. "Then we go together." He lifted her once more and stepped into the darkness of the ruins. The inside was vast, far larger than the stones suggested from outside. A wide hall stretched before them, torches lighting themselves as they entered. Symbols glowed on the walls, shifting as if alive. The girl whispered, "It has begun." Suddenly, the ground shook and the hall split into two paths. One bathed in red light, the other in blue. A voice ancient and deep echoed through the chamber. "Choose, traveler. One path is truth, the other is death." Daniel glanced at the girl, sweat running down his neck. "Which way?" She studied the walls, her fingers tracing the carvings. "Red burns, blue deceives," she murmured, "but together they mean balance." Daniel's eyes narrowed. He carried her to the center, placing his foot between the two paths. The ground trembled again, and a third hidden way opened straight ahead. Cloaked in shadow, the girl smiled faintly. "You listened. That is the first trial." Daniel gave her a half smile. "Guess I'm learning." They entered the shadow path, and the air grew colder. Their footsteps echoed strangely, like whispers of unseen voices. The second chamber opened wide, filled with mirrors of stone. Each mirror reflected not their bodies, but their fears. Daniel saw himself alone, carrying no one. The girl gone. His reflection accused him. "She will die because of you." The girl gasped as her own reflection appeared, a cruel image of the Baron whispering, "You are nothing. A broken shell. No one will ever love you." Her hands trembled, tears welling in her eyes. Daniel knelt beside her. "Don't look. It's a lie." She shook her head. "It feels real." Daniel cupped her face gently, forcing her eyes away from the reflection. "Listen to me. He was wrong. You are not nothing. You are stronger than he ever saw, stronger than anyone knows." Her breath steadied. His words cut through the illusion. The mirrors cracked, shattering into dust. The chamber grew silent. The voice echoed again. Second trial complete. Truth accepted. They moved forward deeper into the ruins until they reached the third chamber. This one held a pool of black water, still and silent. The voice boomed. Sacrifice must be made. One must sink. The other will rise. Daniel frowned, holding her tightly. Not happening. But the girl looked at the water, her face calm. This is my trial, Daniel, not yours. The ruins ask if I am ready to live or die. Daniel shook his head firmly. No. You've been abandoned once. I won't abandon you again. Before he could stop her, she dipped her hand into the pool. Her reflection appeared, not broken, not weak, but standing tall, her legs strong, her eyes fierce. The water rippled, glowing bright, and the reflection spoke. Your strength is not your body but your will. The pool calmed, and the path forward opened. Daniel exhaled heavily, relief flooding him. You nearly scared me. To death, the girl smiled faintly. But I passed. They stepped into the final chamber where the ruins opened into the desert once more. The suns blazed overhead and a strange energy filled the air. The girl looked stronger somehow, her eyes glowing brighter. Her voice was steady. The desert trial accepted us. It will protect us now. Daniel adjusted his grip on her, scanning the dunes. Good, because your father's hunters won't stop. As if in answer, the distant sound of engines carried on the wind again. Hunters were closing in. But now, Daniel knew something had changed. The girl was no longer just a burden to carry. She had faced the trial and survived. She had found her hidden strength, and together they would face whatever came next. The desert stretched wide, the suns high above, and the heat pressed down like a hammer. Daniel carried the girl across the dunes, his breath steady but his body burning with exhaustion. The air was heavy, too quiet, until the sound came. Engines rumbling, machines slicing through sand, the eye. Baron's hunters had found them again. 4 hoverbikes rose from the ridge, black armor gleaming, their weapons pointed at Daniel and the girl. The girl clutched his shoulder tightly, whispering, They are my father's best men. They will not stop, Daniel. They will kill you first, then drag me back, even if I am only a corpse. Daniel set her down gently behind a stone outcropping, raising his rifle. His jaw tightened. Then let's make sure they regret coming here. The hunters spread out, circling like predators, their leader shouted, his voice carried by a loudspeaker. Human! Drop the girl and walk away. You will be spared. Daniel laughed bitterly. Funny, I've heard that one before. He aimed and fired. The shot cracked through the air, striking one hunter's engine. The bike spun and crashed into the sand. Flames bursting. The others roared with rage, firing back. Red beams tore across the dunes, burning sand into glass. Daniel dove for cover, rolling behind the rocks. His rifle hummed as he reloaded. The girl pressed her hands against the stone. Her eyes glowing faintly, she whispered, The trial gave me something. I can feel the desert's memory, its power. Daniel glanced at her quickly, sweat dripping from his brow. Whatever it is, now's the time to use it. The hunters advanced. Their bikes hovered close, dust clouds rising behind them. One aimed directly at Daniel's cover. End this now! Before the blast came, the girl raised her trembling hand, whispering words from the ruins. The sand beneath the hunter's bike shifted suddenly, swallowing it whole. The machine sank like it had fallen into quicksand, the rider screaming as the desert consumed him. Daniel's eyes widened, stunned. You did that, she nodded weakly, her face pale but her eyes burning bright. The desert listens to me now. Daniel grinned. Good. Then let's show them what it can do. The hunters regrouped, circling faster. Their leader roared, The Baron's will is law. She belongs to him, not to you. Daniel stood tall from behind the rocks, shouting back, She doesn't belong to anyone. Not to you, not to him, she belongs to herself. His words echoed across the dunes, and the girl's chest tightened. No one had ever said those words for her before. The hunters opened fire, beams tearing into the stones. Daniel returned shots, his rifle cracking loudly. One hunter fell, but another nearly struck him. A beam scorched his arm, leaving smoke rising from his sleeve. He bit back the pain, refusing to fall. The girl's voice rose again, stronger this time. Her hands pressed into the sand, whispering the ancient language. The dunes shifted like waves, rising into a wall of sand that slammed into one of the hunters, throwing him from his bike. The man hit the ground hard, his armor cracking. Only 2 hunters remained, one of them the leader. His eyes burned with fury inside his helmet. "You are nothing, girl. Your father was right. You are weak." The girl's breath shook, but her voice did not. "No, he was blind. I am not weak." Her eyes glowed brighter, and the sand around her began to whirl like a storm. Daniel shielded his face as wind and grit cut across his skin. The hunters struggled to control their bikes, engines whining. The leader shouted, "This is not your power." But the girl's voice thundered back, "It is mine, my strength, my will, and you cannot take it." The storm grew violent, tearing at the hunters. Daniel fired through the haze, striking one through the chest. The man fell lifeless into the sand. Only the leader remained, his bike trembling under the storm. He aimed his heavy blaster, locking onto Daniel. "Then I'll kill the human first." Time slowed. The barrel glowed with deadly light. Daniel raised his rifle but knew he wouldn't be fast enough. The girl screamed, her hand slamming into the sand. The storm surged into a single strike. The ground beneath the leader's bike erupting upward. The machine flipped violently, crashing into the dunes. The leader rolled across the sand, his armor broken, his weapon shattered. Silence followed, the storm settling. Daniel lowered his rifle, breathing hard. He turned to the girl, her body trembling, sweat on her face, but her eyes shining with fierce strength. "You saved me," he said softly, almost in awe. She looked at him, weak but smiling. "No. We saved each other." Daniel carried her once again, stepping past the fallen hunters. His chest burned, his arm ached, but his resolve was unshaken. "Your father will hear of this," he said. "And when he comes, we'll be ready." The girl leaned against him, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "For the first time, I am not afraid." The desert wind howled around them, carrying away the dust of battle. The Baron's best hunters were gone, but the fight was far from over. The Baron himself would come next, and when he did, the true showdown would begin. The desert was quiet after the storm. Only the soft wind moved across the dunes, carrying away the last signs of battle. Daniel walked slowly, his steps heavy, the girl resting in his arms. His arm still burned from the blaster wound, but he kept going, refusing to stop. The girl looked up at him, her voice soft but firm. "My father will not forgive this, he will come himself." Daniel nodded, his jaw tight. "Let him. We've faced his hunters. We'll face him too." Her eyes shone faintly in the sunlight. "You don't understand. The Baron is not just cruel, he is powerful. His word is law. His armies obey without question." Daniel looked down at her, his face calm. "Then it's time someone showed him that his law isn't the only one that matters." By evening, they reached the edge of the salt flats, an endless stretch of white ground that shimmered like glass under the suns. Daniel placed her gently on the hard surface, kneeling beside her. The girl whispered, "This place is sacred. The ancients called it the mirror of truth. No lies can stand here. My father will hate this ground, but he will come." Daniel adjusted his rifle and sat close, his eyes on the horizon. "Then this is where we'll end it." As night fell, shadows stretched across the flats. The silence was broken by the thunder of engines. A massive caravan appeared, armored vehicles glowing, with red light. At the center rode the Baron, tall and terrible in his black armor. His eyes burned with fury. He stepped onto the salt, his boots cracking the surface. His voice boomed, "Human, you dare steal what is mine? You dare defy me?" Daniel stood, tall, rifle ready. "She was never yours to begin with." The Baron's gaze shifted to his daughter, lying on the salt, but staring back with calm eyes, his lips curled in disgust. "You? Still alive? I should have drowned you at birth." The girl's voice rang clear, stronger than Daniel had ever heard. "And yet here I am, father. You left me in the desert to die, but the desert gave me strength. You called me weak, but I am more than you ever saw." The Baron raised his staff, power crackling along its length. "You are nothing, and this human will die for daring to touch my blood." He struck the ground, sending a shockwave across the flats. Daniel staggered but held firm, firing his rifle. The shot struck the Baron's armor, sparks flying, but the alien only laughed. The girl pressed her hand against the salt, whispering the ancient words she had learned in the ruins. The flats shimmered, glowing faintly. The mirror of truth responded to her call. The Baron's armor flickered, his shadow stretching unnaturally long. His voice grew strained. "What are you doing?" The girl's eyes glowed bright, her voice steady. "This place shows the truth, Father, and the truth is, you are afraid." The salt cracked under his feet, his reflection rising from the white ground. Not strong, not powerful, but twisted and cruel, a man hollow with fear. The hunters gasped, stepping back. Daniel pointed his rifle, his voice like steel. "Your reign ends here," the Baron roared, charging forward, swinging his staff at Daniel. The blow struck hard, knocking Daniel to the ground. The rifle skidded across the salt. The Baron raised the staff again for a killing strike, but before it fell, the girl screamed, pouring all her will into the mirror. The ground erupted with light, blinding the night. The Baron staggered, trapped by his own reflection. His armor cracked. His strength faltered. The girl's voice thundered across the flats. "You called me worthless. You tried to erase me. But I am not nothing. I am your end." The light swallowed the Baron, his scream echoing before silence returned. His form shattered into the salt, leaving nothing but broken armor behind. The hunters dropped their weapons, fear in their eyes. Without their master, they had no will to fight. One by one, they fled into the dunes, leaving only Daniel and the girl on the glowing flats. Daniel crawled to her side, his chest heaving. He touched her shoulder gently. "It's over." She turned her eyes toward him, tears glistening. "No, it has only begun. For the first time, I am free." Daniel smiled faintly, exhausted but relieved. "Then you need a name. A new beginning deserves one." She looked at him, her lips trembling. "A name?" "Yes," Daniel said softly. "Something strong. Something that's yours. Not given by your father, but chosen by you." She thought for a long moment, then whispered, "Lyra. Call me Lyra." Daniel nodded, the name rolling from his lips like a promise. "Lyra." She smiled weakly, but it was the smile of someone reborn, someone who had faced death and found life again. As dawn broke, Daniel carried Lyra toward the horizon. The salt flats behind them shimmered with the memory of their victory. The desert wind carried away the last traces of the Baron's rule. Lyra leaned her head against his shoulder, whispering, "Thank you, Daniel. You saw me when no one else would." He looked ahead, his voice quiet but firm, "And I always will." The desert stretched before them, endless but no longer hopeless. For the paralyzed girl who had been abandoned was now Lyra, reborn in fire and truth. And the man who carried her was not just a rescuer, but the start of a new life. Together, they stepped into a future unknown, but filled with hope, a new beginning, carved in the desert's heart.